Hello, hello! Today we are going to start Unit 2, Lesson 10, Multiplying and Dividing Decimals. So, we're going to start with what we know, and the question says, Ben wants to buy a baseball cap that costs $24.50. The state and sales tax is 8% or 8/100. How much will he pay in sales tax? So A says, how would you estimate the amount of sales tax? So, when we estimate, we round. So if we were to round, we're going to take our $24.50 and our 8%, which is 8/100, and we're going to round those. So if we were to take $24.50, we would round it up to $25. Then we would take our 8% or 8/100, and that's pretty close to 1% or 1/10. And then if we use those, we would know that 1% of $25 would be $2.50. Or you would multiply 25 times 1%. B, you can write $24.50 as 24.5. What is 24.5 as a fraction? Well, our 24 is a whole number, so we would leave that. Oops, sorry. Let's undo that. 24. And then 5/10 right here, 5 over, it's in the tenths place, it would be 5 over 10. So it would be 24 and 5/10. We could simplify that to 24 and 1/2. Excuse me, or we could make it into an improper fraction, and it would be 245/10. Multiply times your denominator, add your numerator. So, what is 8/100 as a fraction? Well, it's exactly like it sounds. It's 8 over 100. So it would be 8/100. How could you show the problem using fractions? Well, just like I said up above, we've multiplied, so we can take our fractions that we came up with, and we can multiply them. Hold on a moment. So, we would have 245/10 times 8/100. E says, multiply the fractions. What is the task? Tax. If we take 245 times 8, we would get 1,960, and 10 times 100 is 1,000. So, now we need to write it as a decimal. For us to get thousands, we would have 3 decimal places. So, if I were to move my 1,960, and I want 3 decimal places, so I'd go 1, 2, 3. It would give me $1.96. Because the zero is just holding that place, it really isn't going to change anything, and we're dealing with money. So, G says, does your answer make sense? Explain. Well, let's think back up to our estimate. We had an estimate of $2.50. So, $1.96 really isn't that far off. So, we would say it makes sense because it is close to our estimate. Okay, so the last one says, explain how you could find the amount of sales tax Ben will pay. Well, we write the decimals as fractions. To see where to place the decimal. Okay, so finding out more. You multiply decimals in the same way you multiply whole numbers. You just need to think about where to place the decimal point in the product. You can think about multiplying fractions to make sense of multiplying decimals. So here you can see that we took and we multiplied our two fractions to get our answer. So that way we knew how many places to move our decimal. So when we multiplied them out, you can see we knew it was our thousandths. Well, for our thousandths, I said it was 3 decimal places. So if we look down here, you can see there's 1 decimal place in the first number, 2 decimal places in the second, so we know our answer will have 3 decimal places. The number of decimal places in the product equals the sum of the number of decimal places in the factors. So sum means to add, so we'd add the amount of decimals in the problem to get how many decimal places in the answer. Okay, so explain why 2 hundredths times 3 tenths equals 6 thousandths. Well, like we said before, multiplying decimals is like multiplying fractions. So we'd change these into fractions, so we'd have 2 100ths times 3 tenths, and when we multiply that out, 2 times 3 is 6, 100 times 10 is 1,000. So if we wrote that as a decimal, it would be 3 decimal places, so it'd be 0.126, which is 3 decimal places. So if we wrote this out as a problem, we would have 0.02, or 2 thousandths, times 0.3, 3 thousandths. Then we'd multiply. 3 times 2 is 6. Everything else is going to give me zeros, so then I can count my decimal places. 1, 2, 3. So there's 2 places here, and 1 place here, which gives us a total of 3 places. So like I said, these are all zeros. I move it 3 places from the right to get an answer of 0.006, or 6 thousandths.
Okay, top of page 92, multiplying decimals to thousandths. 4 6th graders are working on a project. They are going to paint a large banner and need to protect the floor. They measured the floor, which is 3 5/100 meters by 3 658,000 meters. How many square meters of plastic do they need to cover the entire floor? You could estimate it. 3 5/100 meters is close to 3 meters, and 3 658,000 meters is close to 4 meters. So there's your estimation. It would be close to 12. You can also model it and put it over fractions. 3 5/100 is just as it sounds, 3 5 over 100, or 305 over 100. You could also do 3 658 thousandths the same exact way. And then you could also show whole numbers, as it shows in the bottom, model it as using an algorithm to multiply. So you could just multiply it out, count the decimals behind the places behind the decimal, add them, and then move the decimal over that many places. Look at estimate it. About how many square meters excuse me, of plastic will they need? Well, we already said they'll need about 12. About 12 square. That's square meters. Look at the first, model it. What will the denominator of the product be? Well, it would be 100 times 1,000. which is going to equal 100,000. Look at the second model it. How many decimal places will be in the product? 3 decimals in the first. Three in the first one. And 2 in the second one. So a total of 5 spots. Add the partial products and place the decimal point in the product in the second modulet. Does your answer make sense? If you just simply multiply those together, you're going to get 11.1569. And is that close to our estimate? And it is. So yes, it makes sense. Close to 12 meters. So just by looking at that, we know that our guesstimate, which is what I like to call it, it was close to 12, so it was successful. Explain how to multiply decimals. Well, multiply just as you would multiply whole numbers. Multiply like whole numbers. Then add up the number of decimal places, add up decimal spots, to place the decimal in the product. The product is the answer of the multiplication thing. So basically just add them up and see how many spots you need to go over and place your decimal in your answer or your product. Now you guys need to work on your tryout problems, and if you have any questions, raise your hand. I'll come help you. For the first one, you should get 1 in 530,000th kilograms. For the second one, you should get 10 in 125,000th inches. Thank you for playing. Top of page 94. The Olympic National Park is 28 and 5/10 miles from Forks, Washington. It took the Pierce family 75 hundredths hours to drive there. What was their average speed in miles per hour? So we're dividing decimals now. Well, you could estimate it. 28 and a half is close to 30, and 75 hundredths is close to 1 hour. So 30 miles divided by 1 hour would be 30 miles an hour. You could also model it. Since the fraction bar means division, you can write the division problem as a fraction to understand how to divide by decimals, which would be obviously 28 and 5/10 on top divided by 75 hundredths. Then to get a whole number, multiply 75 by 100, move the decimal points 2 places to the right. Then you'd also multiply your numerator by 100. So if you multiply your denominator by 100, you also must do it to the top. Whatever you do to the bottom, do it to the top. So multiply them both by 100, and you would get 2,850 divided by 75. And then you could also just do it regularly, since the divisor has 2 decimal places behind the decimal. You could look at your dividend and move it 2 spots as well, which would then be 75 divided by 2,850. And that is shown right there in the bottom. Connect it. Look at estimate it. About how many miles per hour is their average speed? Well, we already said it's about 30 miles per hour. So why do you multiply 75 hundredths by 100? Well, when you do that, I'm just going to say to get a whole number. Because 75 hundredths times 100 is 75. Then why do you have to multiply 28 and 5/10 by 100? Well, it's got to be an equivalent fraction. So whatever you do to the bottom, you also do to the top. Whatever you do to the denominator, you have to do to the numerator. What is the Pierce family's average speed? So if you divide, you're going to get 38 miles per hour. Does your answer make sense? Explain how you know. Yes, it does. My estimate is close to 38. We got 30, so that's pretty close. Now explain how to divide when the divisor is a decimal. Well, rewrite it. Write it using the power of 10. So if it's 100th, multiply it by 100. If it's a 10th, multiply it by 10. If it's 1,000th, multiply it by 1,000. And that's only the denominator. And then you multiply it by the same one. So 10th by 10, 100th by 100, 1,000th by 1,000. And then you also do it to the numerator. And then divide normally. Okay, you guys are going to be responsible for try it again. And if you need help, raise your hand once you've tried it, and I'll come by and help you. On the first one, you should get 70. And on the second one, which is 16, you should get 367. Now we're going to go to the top of page 96. Dividing decimals. Okay, the average walking speed is 3 4/10 miles per hour. How many hours would it take to walk from Boston to Seattle? A distance of 3,020 and 22 hundredths. Estimate it. You can estimate the quotient. So 3 4/10 is close to 3 miles per hour, and 3,020 and 22 hundredths is about 3,000 miles. So 3,000 divided by 3 would be your total number of hours. You can also model it. So you could put it as fraction form, as they have, or you could put it as just regular form and then move the decimal in your divisor completely out. So I'm going to highlight it for you. Right here, move it all the way over to where it's not in there anymore. Then however many places you move it over in your divisor, you also need to move over in your dividend. You're not going to get rid of it in your dividend. You may need to add zeros. It just depends. So just move it as many places as they did, and if you need zeros, add zeros. If not, then don't worry about it. Then just slide the decimal up, divide like normal. Connect it. Look at estimated about how many hours would it take to walk from Boston to Seattle. Well, 3,000 divided by 3 is 1,000 hours. Whoop. Let me get rid of that. So it'd take you about 1,000 hours. 18, look at the fractions and model it. Why do you multiply the numerator and denominator by 10? Because the divisor is tenths. And just multiply it by 10. Explain how moving the decimal point one place to the right is the same as multiplying the numerator and denominator of the fraction. Multiplying by ten moves the decimal point one place to the right, which would be the same as multiplying by 10. How many hours would it take to walk from Boston to Seattle, and how can your estimate help you decide where to place the decimal point? Well, if you do it perfectly, it would take you 888 3/10 hours. Then how do you know? It is close to my estimate of 1,000 hours. Then how do you divide by decimals? You multiply the divisor and dividend by a power of 10 that will give a whole number divisor. Then divide like normal. Okay, try it 22 and 23, and if you have any questions, let me know and I'll come help you. On 22, you should get $53.70. Then on 23, you should get 32 thousandths inch per hour.